Welcome to episode 90 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I think I dated the same girl Feck is dating. Also, I used to live outside of Milpitas and go to the mall a lot, but I never heard anything about River's Edge.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast. And it really makes me happy watching this film that I had very few friends in high school. And even today, I think this type of stuff influenced why I have so few today.
That's why I'm not your friend. So joining us today, we have two guests, the authors of Wormwood, Tim Meyer and Chad Lutzke are here. Guys, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back.
So, yeah, Chad, you were here once before, and we had a good time. We did the Transfiguration, and it was a fun movie I hadn't seen. And you once again picked something I haven't seen. So this was my first time going into River's Edge, and like all my friends are like, how the fuck have you never seen River's Edge? But, you know, that's life. But so why don't you each tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll jump into Wormwood a little bit.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay. My name is Tim Meyer. I write mostly horror, supernatural horror mostly. My works include The Switch House, Kill Hill Carnage, Limbs, and I also co-host a podcast called The Final Guys, which airs every Tuesday night on YouTube at 8 p.m. And other than that, I'm pretty boring. So, Chad, take it away.
Okay, I'm much like Tim, but I have different book titles, and I don't do the supernatural thing. My podcast is Paleo Cheese Podcast, and we don't have a set schedule because we're not very organized like the Final Guys somehow are, even with all that alcohol.
Accurate.
So tell me about Wormwood, guys. What's it about?
Tim's pretty good at that, I think.
I think Chad is the best at this, actually.
I'm sold. No.
It's a dark coming of age about a new kid in town who starts to develop some friendships that slowly turn toxic. Okay. In the meantime, he's being faced with things like possibly falling in love and having that be a great distraction and breaking his moral compass. And just being blinded by peer pressure and lust and the idea of love and what is it, and it just kind of, there's this downward spiral of things starting to get out of control, and it gets really, really dark.
Nice. You actually both hit one of the first things I wanted to talk about. Tim, your stuff is all usually seeped in supernatural and always in that direction, and Chad, you seem very opposed to writing that.
I've written plenty in short stories, but yeah, longer stuff. Not.
But so how did that mix right away? Like, going into this collaboration, you guys have very different styles. Like, Tim is much more detailed and wordy and just really fleshing things out and really spelling out the scene. Chad's stuff is much more, I don't want to say like short, but it's choppy. It's very purposeful. Like, every word gets as much meaning as it can, so you don't have to write other words, it feels like. And then it's all subtext. And how did those two styles mix together doing it?
Well, right away we realized that they were not mixing, and so we decided to do a different route. That I have a couple friends that do this. It's kind of untraditional as far as collaborative writing goes. Something I've never done, something Tim's never done, and that was to basically have a outline, nothing extensive, nothing that we wrote down, but just we had fleshed out ideas for the most part, and knew the direction that we were headed with the characters, and we had kind of a really good idea of not only the plot, of course, but the end and stuff, from A to B and stuff. And then Tim Tim had already written at least one chapter, and that's when we realized, because then I went in and rewrote the whole chapter, and then I felt like a jerk, and I was like, well, why don't we do it like this? And then I presented the idea that you write a couple chapters, and then you send them to me, and then I will go through them and do like revisions, or rewrites or whatever, and then go back to you and see if you're okay with the changes and the voice and stuff like that. So that way, it felt seamless, and people are seeing that. So that was because had we not done that, it probably would have been really distracting if we would have just thrown the ball back and forth.
Yeah, it would have been super messy if we had done that.
Yeah,
because like you guys said, like our voices are so different, and I've read collaborations that are like that too, where like the two voices are different. You can tell exactly who wrote what, and kind of becomes almost distracting to a certain point. Mm-hmm. So like we very early on we decided we didn't want to do that, and that's how we kind of came up with that process. But I think it definitely worked out in our favor.
That's awesome. And I do a lot of collaborations myself, and the biggest thing is feeling that you can be completely honest with the other person. You can say, this isn't working for me. And that doesn't mean, hey, you're a fucking idiot and I hate you, but just because you're like best friends and hang out all the time doesn't mean you can write together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so like, did that work really well for you guys? Like, did you see the same vision the whole time, basically? I know you said the outline, but like, did you have a lot of conflict with wanted that to go, or were you guys like on the same page and rolling with it?
I mean, I don't think we had any conflict, but we definitely in the beginning we had a completely different vision. I mean, like I said, I tend to go supernatural with my stuff, so in the beginning there was a lot of supernatural elements in the story that Chad didn't want in there. But as far as like meshing together, I think like our personalities kind of align right for a good collaboration, because I'm pretty laid back and like I don't really give a shit. Not to say I don't give a shit, but like I'm just more relaxed and I kind of enjoy like the collaborative process. And I enjoy it when other people put their ideas into things, and there's not a lot of fight with it, because I want it to be kind of just like a mutual thing. So and Chad's more of like the alpha. He kind of like takes charge and is like we should do this and this. I think that'll work really well. And I'd be like, yeah, that's awesome, but could we also add this in? And then like we would kind of just have conversations like that back and forth. And like I said, I think just our personalities, just the way we are, kind of matched up really well just to make this happen. Because if we had been so alike, like if we had both been two alphas, definitely wouldn't have worked out. We would have been button heads the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't have. Tim's really laid back, very easy to work with.
It's very cool. So one last question about the collaboration, and then I'll let you move on about it. Have you guys taken anything from this collaboration that has now changed how you write by yourself? Or at least anything noticeable?
I mean, for me, so like there's a point in the process where we had written scenes, like just random scenes, and for me, like typically when I write alone, I write very linearly. So like I go from page one and I just go through the whole thing. Whereas Chad, I guess somehow magically, I don't know how he does this, but he'll like skip around and write like an end scene at some point and then go back and kind of fill in the blanks. And like that kind of blows my mind. It gives me a lot of anxiety. So at like one point we had like all these random scenes that were kind of just like all over the place, and I was starting to get a little anxious. I was like, what do we do with all these? And he had to like calm me down a little bit, talk me off the ledge. But like now, I'm still not on board with that like style, like skipping around, but I'm more okay with it because in a thing that I wrote recently, I did that. I kind of wrote a scene that was like the end of the story first, and now I'm kind of going back. So like I've kind of adapted a little bit to that. I still like writing linearly, and I still feel more comfortable doing that, but at least like my mind has changed a little bit on that whole process, and I don't stress out as much anymore.
That's cool.
The stuff that I wrote directly thereafter, there have been a handful of times where I wanted something to be a little bit wordier than what I normally do, and Tim wasn't there to be like, I'll just throw this at Tim. I don't have to worry about it. He can, and he wasn't there to do that for me. So there was a couple times where I thought, kind of like WWTD, like what would Tim do here?
Nice.
Jeez. Feel bad for you if that's what you were thinking.
So this is normally where I ask, why did you choose this film? I want to do this differently today. I want to guess why you chose this film. So what I know about Chad's writing is it's very based on what you learned as a teenager and things that you experienced. Mm-hmm. And so there's usually some combination of like peer pressure, exploring unknown territory as you get older and you have to experience new things, and just the nostalgia factor all together, right? So I look at this and it doesn't surprise me at all that you picked an 80s film about teenagers. And
dark.
And yeah,
and that's dark.
And dark. And very dark. Very dark. So dark that like John Lithgow wouldn't be in it, like and but no, is that pretty close? And what else would you add to why you chose this film?
Yeah, pretty much on the money. I mean, it feels like it's something I would have written 100%. It just, obviously I saw it when I was, first time I saw it when I was like, I think 17. I think it came out the year I turned 17. And I just dated myself big time right there. So, and it just, I think it's one of these movies that I get heavily influenced by indie films, especially dark ones. And this is, I feel like without this movie and without a couple other ones, like maybe David Lynch's Wild at Heart, I think my writing would be totally different. I feel comfortable watching stuff like this or reading stuff like this where it's, could happen. Well, obviously this movie did happen, but, I think that's why I stay away from the supernatural most of the time, because I do have issues with suspension of disbelief, and I feel more at home dealing with like real life horror. So I really am a fan of kind of like parentless. I mean, there were parents in here, but they played, with the exception of maybe the mom, they played such a minor role. These, this is kind of a parentless film. I love stuff like that, like the Peanuts. The parents are never around the teachers. You don't. And they don't even have voices. They just got the wah wah pedal in their voice. And so I just love that. I love things, movies where the parents are not in the way and the kids are on their own, and you don't know what to expect because they're all learning. And I like to have that kind of learning, whether it be going through grief or learning to fall out of love, or learning to fall in love, or trying to decipher the difference between love and lust, or going on a road trip and just finding yourself, and finding out more about people. And there's a lot of that in this movie too, about like loyalty and right and wrong, and where you should draw the line, and of course peer pressure. So I just thought it was a really good. For me, it holds up really well just because of the nostalgia. I have no idea if any of you would like it.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I loved it as well.
One thing I want to add to what you were just saying, you were talking about the parents being kind of absent. And I find myself always attracted to that as well. What I like about it is if you take out parents, or they're inept, or they're totally powerless, like the mom in this, right? Like, you don't have that guidance. So you don't have that safety net, and you have to make the steps as a character, and you have to forge your own way. And I think that that's always more powerful to me than being able to go ask Dad, who has the answer to everything, you know? Yeah. So...
But yeah, to add on to that, even as I was watching this, and it was a different decade for me as far as when I was a teenager at the end of the 80s, going into the 90s, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of the 90s, as in my preteen years at the end of the 80s. But those things still existed as far as you're hanging out with your friends, something happens, you're not going to fucking tell an adult. You know, and it's that whole thing of you've got to figure out yourself. Because you're worried about so many things happening, as far as having to deal with your parents, whether this happens to be a healthy situation with your parents or an unhealthy situation, a distant situation with your parents. And, feeling that your friends are a lot closer to you than actual blood family. I thought it was really good the way that well, I should say not even good, but I think it was really accurate as far as how it was portrayed and how all these friends are having their different reactions or different coping with what happened with, the murder of Jamie and the fact that it was one of their friends that did it. So do we ignore it? Do we get affected by it? Do we turn people in? Do we hide the body? What do we do? So I thought it was a great way to allow the teenagers the agency to deal with it, as opposed to, as James pointed out, going to your dad, like the typical 80s sitcom BS of, let me go ask Dad. He knows everything. He's got all the answers. And then he tells you the thing to do. You go do it, roll credits, everything. We start a whole new episode. And that's not how real life works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Tim, had you seen this before, or was this your first time as well?
So I'm like 95% sure that I've seen this before. I feel like I watched it on TV or something, but maybe not like the entire thing, like when I was younger, because as I was watching it this time around to prepare for the podcast, I do like remember parts of it very vividly, but then there's other parts where I was just like, I completely forget this. So it was definitely a film that I had seen before, maybe like not paid attention 100% to, but I felt like watching this now was almost kind of like the first time I watched it. So,
and for me, it was totally my first time. And when you say it held up, like this is so relevant today, it was crazy. I have teenage boys, and this never goes away. So it's definitely still relevant today.
And so, plus, I was wondering if, I liked Lane's character, Crispin Glover, but I can see I can see his character ruining the whole movie for somebody who doesn't know how to handle him.
Dude, I
can
love
see that.
Glover, though. I love him so much. He's so good.
Crispin's one of my favorite actors. I had the joy of meeting him. I got to watch his movies that he makes. And and we had like a meet and greet afterwards. And it was really cool because like you were in line, but then where he was totally separated from everybody. So you got complete one-on-one attention, and he didn't rush you. He didn't take a quick picture. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. But as an actor overall, he's just one of those guys that everything I've ever seen him in, I just completely adore him.
Yeah.
So while I can see why this might drive people away, I was instantly sold. I was like, holy shit, Crispin Glover's in this? Yes.
Yeah. I think he's so quirky though that like Chad said, some people could be like put off by his like mannerisms and just like his little ticks that he does. But I find that stuff like super interesting, and it's like, like that's like just a different way of portraying that character. And I don't know, I love that stuff.
I mean, for me, it's just... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, he's very eccentric, and he's much in the way that when you say, you watch a Nicolas Cage movie, not all of them, but a lot of them, and you're like, oh, he was definitely Nicolas Cage in this movie.
Right. Yeah.
Crispin was definitely Crispin in this movie.
Yeah, if you want to get smashed, play a drinking game with this movie. Every time he moves his hands, you have to take a drink.
Wow.
Make it 5 minutes to the movie. I mean.
Yeah, you'd be dead in 10 minutes.
Oh man. No, I find it to be such a confidence level. Like Crispin believes in himself enough that he walks in and auditions this way, but like he also doesn't care. Like if I don't get it, it wasn't right for me. right?
Yeah.
And that level of confidence is awesome. And that's one of the things I admire about him so much. Like, so while he's really fucking weird in some ways, that's what I love about him,
Right.
you know? And as a kid, like even George McFly is fucking strange compared to everybody else, right? But that's why we remember him. And that's why he's so iconic. And it's why we all do the, hey, you get your damn hands off her, you know, like, yeah, exactly. Like, that's why he's so ingrained in us, because when he chooses a character and he literally gives a piece of himself to it, and other people become that character, and Crispin makes that character become him as well.
Right.
And that's what I adore about him.
You definitely have to have a lot of confidence to dance the way he does. And, I was Friday the 13th.
I was just gonna ask, like, when you met him, did you ask him like what was going on with that dance scene in Friday the 13th final chapter?
No, I did not. You know, I'm going to tell you this story, even though I promised myself I would never do this. I've done a lot of cons, and I've even worked at cons as like the guest relations person, like dealing with celebrities all day, right? Like, people don't faze me. Crispin 100% fazed me. And I don't know why, but I panicked. And what I chose to talk about, for some fucking reason, was his role in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Oh.
And while it's a hilarious role, and I absolutely love it, and there's that scene where he's like, hey, how's your mom? And they're like, she's fine. And he's depressed about it because he's a mortician and he doesn't want her to be fine. Like, that kind of stuff sticks with me. And then I leave this thing and I'm like, why the fuck is that what you chose to talk about? You know?
I mean, that's also interesting, because I also love What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I think that's a fantastic movie. And he has a small part in that, but it's an awesome part.
But that's exactly Crispin. Like, that's what we're talking about. He has this tiny part, and that's what sticks out to me, you know? But yeah, that is a great movie. Anyway, not to make this the whole Crispin Glover show.
We could, though.
We could, yeah.
That's
true.
Some of the other actors I thought did a really good job too. Like another underrated actor is in this film, Daniel Roebuck. Super awesome. He plays Samson, the guy. Who
Okay. Yeah. Oh, he's in a ton of stuff, ton of TV stuff.
He's in so much stuff. Like, he plays like again, a small character on like one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Lost. And he's only in it for like maybe 3 or 4 episodes, but he has like such an impact on it. And I just thought like the way that he acts in this film, which is like so detached from, like, just so disassociated from himself, like was just like, it just worked for that character. And I thought he did a phenomenal job.
But like you said, like, his disassociation and everything, like, I think this is one of his strongest roles. Like, he was so good at this, and I was really impressed here. And I kind of want to see him in more stuff like this, like just that pulling from that psychologically deep place. I thought he just did an amazing job with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he definitely needs more work for sure. I mean, if you look at his IMDb credits, I mean, he's got steady work, but like Chad said, it's mostly like television stuff and like one-offs, like guest stars and stuff. But yeah, he could definitely carry some major scenes.
He played a recurring role as a cop on some show I used to watch all the time, and now I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember him playing a FBI agent, U.S. Marshal, police officers, all those things for a while. But it's I should have recognized him from the Fugitive films, Fugitive and U.S. Marshals first. But the first thing I thought of was like, oh my God, this is the guy who played Jay Leno in that TV movie about the late night wars. Because I will never see him and not think about the fake, the prosthetic chin that they put on him to make him look like Jay Leno. And that was the biggest complaint about that TV movie was, you really didn't have to he looked like what was that character, Mac the Knight from McDonald's?
Yeah.
He looked like he looked like that guy because the chin was so pronounced.
He's got a pretty big chin anyway. As long as he was, thinner or whatever, he could pull it off without a prosthetic. I'm sure. Yeah. I didn't see the movie, but I learned.
Trust me, it's not something that you need to go back and watch.
I'll trust you on that.
And also Dennis Hopper, who's great in everything. He was just fucking crazy in this movie.
This is my favorite Dennis Hopper performance next to Frank Booth in Blue Velvet.
I was going to say, like, Blue Velvet's definitely got to be number one, but this is close.
Yeah, I love that character. I did learn something very interesting about the girl who played Jamie, who we see mostly just dead and naked. Mm-hmm. She's only been in one other, because I went on IMDb, and she's only been in one other like full-length film. I can't remember what it is, but I think it was like in 87 or 88, so right after River's Edge. And then she's a writer and producer. I think she's released at least one novel, and she has produced tons of music videos. And I'd be willing to bet at least a dozen of them we've seen. Like anything, I saw Bryan Adams in there, Rob Zombie, a bunch of them. But her first acting thing was she's credited as an alien when she was 9 as an alien in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Oh wow!
I thought that was super interesting.
That's random.
Yeah, so totally random. Like I never would have guessed that chick from one of my favorite movies, the Dead Naked Girl, is one of the unisex looking aliens in Close Encounters.
Huh. Well, I'm always fascinated. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say she did a great job as like a dead naked girl for the entire.
Yeah, she did very much.
I'm always fascinated by how people stay in the industry but do something totally different like that, like going to produce music videos and stuff. Like, I don't know. It's I'm fascinated by the paths people take in life and how they get from job A to job B to wherever they're going. You know.
Right.
So anyway.
I did a little stalking and I went to her Facebook page, and there's no pictures of like River's Edge or anything like that. And I'm wondering, and she's got kids and family and stuff, and I'm wondering if it's just because she's, full frontal in that so much, if it's just something that she doesn't even really talk about anymore.
Yeah, maybe. And then, what's the name of that? Who's the character that plays Matt? I know I've seen him in something.
I think his name is Keanu. Keanu.
I loved
Keanu. It's pronounced Keanu. Or quinoa.
Just like the Key and Peele movie.
Yeah.
But, so when Chad told me that he wanted to do this, I watched it. Was hilarious because they're like starring Crispin Glover and there's no mention at all of Keanu Reeves, and I was like, that is amazing.
It was like one of his first films, right?
Yeah,
I feel like back to Nicolas Cage too. I feel like both these guys, Keanu and Nicolas Cage, I feel like they really shine early on. Like when like Nicolas Cage in Wild at Heart, I feel like he was born to play that character. Mm-hmm. And then Keanu in this movie, like he's like low hanging fruit as far as if you want to make fun of. I mean, the guy apparently is a really cool person, and I like his movies, but there's a lot to poke fun at with his kind of like. Monotone. His acting is just two-dimensional, but this one for me is different. It's like I feel like this is not every movie he was made to play, but this one for sure he was. It like this and Point Break, but there's just a lot to poke fun at with some of the stuff.
How dare you, sir? Keanu's a saint.
He is.
Well, he never said "whoa" in this movie, so that wasn't his thing yet.
But did he go back and hide the keys? Anyway.
All right, so I guess with this film, it's I guess the general synopsis is one of the friends, Samson. They call him John because his last name is Toilet. Sounds like toilet, so they start calling him John. Right. So he kills the girl, who they're all friends with. I mean, they're all friends with Samson. And then this descends into this thing of, one, believing that John had actually done it, to seeing the body and then still not coming to the realization that this is taking place. And what was striking to me about this, especially juxtaposed with the end of the film, is that there's like no emotional response from anybody, at least from what I saw, other than maybe shock. Mm-hmm. But there's no grief, there's no rage, there's nothing like that. I mean, if anything, the person who seems to respond the most to it is Lane, because he's kind of like, oh, we need to do something about this. And, basically devising a plan of like, fuck it, she's dead. We don't want our buddy to go to prison for this. We're just gonna make sure that, it just goes away. And the thing that just bothered me the most about his character was, one, how quick he was at problem solving, or at least perceived problem solving. Mm-hmm. But then two, it's he assumes everybody else is going to go along with this. It's like, we're all friends. We got to stick together. We got to make sure that this guy, whatever. And then later on, those discussions, I think, oh my gosh, Maggie, I think, who brought it up, was basically saying like, it could be any one of us who are next. He could kill any one of us. And that doesn't occur to anybody at the beginning, or at least early on with this crisis, that John could turn on any of them. He could kill any of them at any time he wants to. Why protect him?
Especially with like the reason that he gave as to why he killed. Like, she was just talking shit. Like, that was the reason he gave as to why he killed her. Like, so. Like, you're right. Like, anybody could be next if that's your reasoning behind it. But yeah, like that's just crazy that they went through like all those emotions or lack of emotions when that was the reason given as to why he killed her.
Do you think that go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think the movie would have hit differently or harder or not as hard if we were giving 15 to 20 minutes of some of Jamie being alive and seeing their relationship?
No, I like the fact that, it would have been a completely different movie. It would have totally taken away from like the whole plot, I think. I think it's very interesting that the fact that you're just kind of dropped in the middle of it, after it's happened.
Yeah, I think it changes everything. I think the audience is no longer the same as the teens. Yeah. As it is, we're being brought out there and we're being shown the body. And we're like, that's the dead chick. And we're paying attention to everyone else. And that's the exact same thing that these kids are going through going out there. And so if we had even 30 seconds of her being alive and witnessed her murder, we view her differently. She's not just like she could easily be a mannequin laying there.
Yeah.
We
would view everyone differently because we would have empathy and they would lack it, and it would frustrate us. So we wouldn't be able to root for anyone.
Yeah.
I think they're a bunch of idiots.
Well, and James, you brought up the mannequin thing, and of course, this is not jumping forward to Feck's girlfriend, but Matt's little brother. Which I think is kind of an interesting touch on so many different ways. You almost have more of a connection. I said I wasn't going to jump to Feck's girlfriend, but almost have more of a connection with Feck's, doll girlfriend because of the way that he humanizes this inanimate object.
He gives her life.
More than anybody else has given Jamie any type of humanity. But the film starts off where Matt's little brother is on the bridge and he drops his sister's doll into the river, sees Samson across the way. And you just kind of see, you see him throwing away this doll that his sister, really loves, cares about, and Samson has thrown away the life of this girl. So you've got this cool connection, or this dark connection between these two people, and that's where we're going with it. Where you one question why this little boy is throwing the doll off, which it quickly gets answered in like 10 minutes. It's because he's a dick. He's a horrible brother. And he just wants to torment his sister. Whereas Samson, John, he has this moment of, she was talking shit. So, I squished her out.
He was a dick. Did anybody else like cheer when he got the shit kicked out of him?
Of course.
The end of the
I didn't feel bad for him at all.
And I never really noticed it until Don was talking, but there's even like there's a real strong connection, and I don't know why it's there or if it's just a coincidence between the little kid and I can't remember his name. Between the little kid and John, they're both, essentially killing this female figure at the same time. He's throwing his sister's doll and murdering her, he said, I think is what he said. He killed her, he murdered her, whatever he said. And so is John. And then as soon as he watches the thing go away, we see John and the kid sees him screaming right after he's choked his girlfriend out. And then this little boy wants to he's trying to bond with this guy.
Right.
Get high with him, get him some beer, cruise around. He says, John and I are tight, aren't we, John? John doesn't care if I come along. So I don't know what that meant, but until just now, I didn't realize that kind of strange connection and those parallels.
Thought maybe it was like trying to say that this kid was on the path to maybe becoming something that he was. That's the only thing I could kind of take away from that connection.
Do you guys have a favorite quote? Because there's a lot of quotable stuff in here, not just from Lane either.
How'd you know it would be from Lane? Yeah, mine isn't even a quote so much as it's the feeling and how much it sums Lane up. But it's when he's trying to get everyone to help, and he's like, "Fine, I'll just do it." Like he has this like holier than thou loyalty, and he's holding it over them. Like everything about him is how loyal we are and how we're there for each other. But he's trying to show how he's better than them.
Right.
And it's not so much a quote, but that line really hit me as the core of Lane. It's that he'll do anything for who he wants to do something for.
Right.
And then he's holding it over everyone else. And so, not exactly a quote, but that's where I land.
I think
go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to say, I think like my favorite quote, I'm just looking at quotes on IMDb, and one of my favorite scenes from the movie was when Keanu was arguing with the dad, and he's like, the only reason you stay here is to fuck my mother and eat her food. Motherfucker, food eater.
Food eater, yeah, that was going to be, I've got two favorites, and that was one of them. My other one was when, Samson, he's just so assertive. He just doesn't care. And he's in this crazy dude's house that's like completely unhinged. He's like, "Are you some kind of psychopath?" And he's like, "No." And Dennis Hopper's like, or Feck, he says, "No, I'm normal." And he's like, "I know that's a doll, right, Ellie?" I started laughing.
That's really good. Yeah.
That's the other thing too. Like the dynamic between those two characters. It's like that Dennis Hopper's character is batshit crazy, but like he's even terrified of the kid who's done this. Like that's how fucked up that kid was. Like he's that fucked up that the fucked up guy is scared of him.
Plus, Fex justifies his murder because there was love involved, and he sees that there wasn't, and deems that guy as just like Feck was like, "I've got a reason. I loved her." Yeah. What's your excuse? And he just I think Feck viewed the murder as more of just like a waste. Like there was no reason for it.
There are a few that I look at. Feck has some really good ones. But there was that whole moment, I guess, to talk about his level of friendships or his experience with it when he was a biker, when he gets in that accident. I'm sorry, when he talks about the accident and how he lost his leg and everything, he's like, I just remember lying in the gutter and bleeding, and there's my legs next to a beer, and I just thought to myself, I wonder if there's any beer in that can. But he also talks about how, like, they fucking left me. They left me behind. Like, nobody came to check on him. Nobody made sure he was okay. It was like, they fucking left me. I lost my leg, but you know what? Fuck it. C'est la vie. I want this beer. Mm-hmm. And then, even speaking of beer, there was even that point where Lane and John run into Matt at the convenience store. No, I'm sorry, that's a different scene. But anyway, he goes into the to go get beer, and Lane is like, "Man, I thought I'd at least rate a Michelob," which again is hilarious because it's not. and it's warm, man. Why is it warm? And you're just thinking about this guy who, as James pointed out, he's doing this to kind of live up to this personality or persona that he's kind of built and constructed within this group of friends, this group of friend network. And it's kind of like, I don't want to be thanked. I don't need to be thanked, but, you got me a beer. You could at least done this. As if, all the other stuff that he said is, again, is complete bullshit, because he's not doing it just to do it. He's doing it because he, one, wants recognition, and two, if you're going to get him a nice little treat, get him the right shit.
Lane really sees himself as such a good friend, but yet 3 times in the movie, everybody knows how manipulative he is, and 3 times in the movie, he's like, "No, man, I just stopped him to say hi." Like when he gets and he has an ulterior motive for everyone. He goes to get weed from Feck, and he's like, "Oh no, I'm just saying hi." He wants to borrow dude's truck. He's like, "No, I'm just saying hi." And then there was somebody else. I think it was maybe one of the girls. He's like, "Oh no, I'm just saying hi." And he wanted some of the gas money. I can't remember what it was, but
I feel like we all had friends like that too.
Oh yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I'm really your friend, but I just want to borrow your video games for ever.
Like, hey, buddy. It's like, what do you want? I mean, that would normally be my response when somebody came to me. It's like, hey, what do you want? Well, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I never had friends like that, but all of my friends did. It was the strangest thing.
I wonder who that friend was, James.
It was you. Spoiler alert.
At the end, even Keanu, Matt, he says, he's like, he doesn't care about us. You don't care about him either. What are you doing? Why are you doing all this? And I don't really know why that is, because John wasn't a good friend. He didn't really care. He was just like this lump that sat wherever. And then Lane would lug him around. And then John would be like, "I did this." And then he was just like this puppy that was pissing all over the house, and Lane was trying to, clean up after him and tell everybody that he's potty trained.
Wasn't there one scene where I think one of the girls, or like some of the girls, were like going to call the cops on them and then decided not to? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, they were at a payphone. They picked up, started dialing it, and they're like, they changed their mind for some reason.
I thought that was interesting too, because I feel like that's like a super realistic thing that would happen. Like,
yes,
you'd want to turn him in because that's the right thing to do, but also there's like that party who's like, do I really want to get involved in this? Like, is this, like those kinds of thoughts that would probably come out from that situation. I thought that was like an interesting scene that they had written.
Well, you even see with Matt when he does go and speak, to the authorities about this, how they quickly turn on him.
Right.
And, the detective, he's sitting there like, I'm trying to help you. Like, I'm trying, I didn't do this. I know. He said, well, we went out there. Where's the body? He's like, well, you said it was buried. Like, well, I thought it was. Maybe it just fell into the. Oh, so a gust of wind came and blew the body. He's like, I don't know. Maybe. So.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good scene too, with Keanu doing some really good acting in that.
It was. You felt the frustration, and then you got pissed off at the cop. One, because you know what's going on,
right?
But then you question, how many times has this possibly happened where somebody went with good intentions because they didn't know? I mean, a teenager. I remember being a teenager. I was dumb as shit when it came to stuff like this. Great when it came to books. Great when it came to school. But as far as anything outside of that, as far as you need to have me make a decision based off of common sense, I'm supposed to call the cops?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But you see how frustrating it is, as far as like, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what, society tells me I'm supposed to be doing, or what my conscience is telling me I'm supposed to be doing, and you're beating me up about it.
Yeah, you're getting punished for it.
Yeah, so fuck you, cops. I'm out. Which, it was like you said, it was a great performance on his part, and it was a great construction of reality into the film by those who are creating this movie. Because, in all honesty, we've probably all watched enough of those true crime documentaries and where they have the interviews with people, with the police, the detectives, whoever. And 9 times out of 10, that's how they go. It's like, how'd you know that her body was there? Well, because I saw Rick dump it. It's like, oh, well, where's Rick now? Are you trying to help him out? Oh, you know what? You're probably saying it's him, so we don't arrest you. And you see that frustration come out, and it's great.
Yeah, you watch like Making a Murder. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but like you just watch like the cops and how they react. And I'm sure like not all cops have done stuff like this, but like you watch that and it's like, oh, that's like a completely plausible scenario where like you try to do something good and you get fucked for it.
It's a roll of the dice when you're dealing with that. I can't count how many times I've been involved in a situation like that where maybe I was talking to the police about something or called the police for one reason or another, and maybe they showed up for, at my house, and I'm like, hey, this is going down. And I knew answering the door, this guy's going to be a dick or he's not. That's all, it really is just a roll of the dice. And there were a couple times where I was like, hey man, I'm just telling you what's going on. And they were total buttholes about it. And then other times it was like, hey man, I appreciate your help or whatever. So yeah, not like Tim said, they're not all like that, but you just never know. And it seemed very believable to me.
They're like people, I mean, there's a lot, some good ones out there, and a whole lot of bad ones.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the teenage experience as well. It doesn't have to be police. It's any authority. Like going to your parents, going to a teacher, going to anybody. You get that same reaction. Like the default is not to believe you and to assume that you're involved. And so, like, looking at this from the point of view of a teenager, you're used to people being mad at you over nothing, let alone something like this, right? And then you're used to authority not believing you, not helping. And I'll be honest, guys, I don't think I would have called the cops in this situation. I think I would have wanted to, but I would have talked myself out of it. And I am 100% on board with everyone in this film because of that, because those are the experiences I had. It's that I couldn't go to authority because they always shut me down. And even if you could, it was so much work. What's the fucking point? And there's also that belief that it will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Who would you have gone to? I mean, because you got this teacher that's represented. I can't remember his history or language or whatever. But I could see myself possibly going to a teacher or somebody who's not a parent, but another authority figure that I've trusted or liked and said, hey, Mr. Smith, I don't know who to go to with this, but X, Y, and Z happened. I mean, aside from the police, who would any of you possibly have gone to at that same age?
I would have went to some hot chick.
You would want to see a dead body.
I would have just like, hey, this is going down. Seriously, I would. And I think that Keanu's experience in with the police, I think that has a lot to do with the culture at the time too. In 1987, I looked, I have blonde hair, but I looked just like that. I had that same kind of denim thing with a skull thing on the back, and I had, other writing and stuff. My hair was a little bit longer, but I looked just like that, and my friends looked like that. And we were like this was before like kind of thug culture, so we were the thugs. Even if you weren't causing trouble, it was like the 80s equivalent of, when you hear the stereos thumping way too loud that are rattling the windows as they're going down the street and stuff, and people looking like they're trouble, even though they might not be. Right. And that's kind of like the equivalent back then is if you had, seriously, there have been so many times where I was walking down the road and women in cars would like lock their doors, or I didn't get a job because of my hair, which wasn't that long, just, like I said, a little bit longer than Keanu's. Just things like that, where it was like, if you looked like that, you're automatically, a stoner or something like that. And I think the cops probably made that assumption right away, because that kind of counterculture at the time was, they were like the troublemakers, even though there's a huge difference between that like 80s culture of troublemaking and today there's a lot of crime involved and a lot of violence. Back then it was more like, we're just looking to get high. Right. We're looking to have a good time, and then and that's it. We're not looking to fight. We're not looking to meth out and stuff like that. It was totally different, but still I guess felt threatening to certain to adults. That's all.
No, I think that goes a long way. It's the idea that your existence is making trouble. Like the way that you look is disrupting what we have going on here, and we get the same thing with race. We get the same thing with like, they're opening a rehab in my neighborhood. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Or just anything like that. Just somebody else's existence threatens my false sense of security, Yeah.
I don't know, man. I love this movie, and I'm glad that it holds up, and that you guys enjoyed it too, because it's like I said, you sometimes you have a hard time telling if something is, do I like this because I'm so close to it, or because of this nostalgia? Does it hold up? Is everyone going to laugh at Elaine's character?
I think.
Well, I did, but in a good way.
Yeah. I think it holds up really well, man. I mean, I think the screenplay is perfect. I mean, there's so many things going on thematically. There's so much stuff going on. It's like a movie I feel like we could talk about for like 6 hours and still not hit every single thing that was like weaved into the story. But yeah, I mean, it's all around just a solid movie. And I'm really glad that you chose it, because I had a blast watching it and just like breaking it down.
Yeah.
Well, and there's no throwaway characters. Like every person in this serves some purpose. Even like the closest thing to a throwaway character is that guy who is talking to the news and he's like, and by the way, I'm in a band.
Dude, he's hilarious. Oh my gosh.
And that is so much characterization.
I love that guy. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. Like I was like, I want to see more of that dude.
Yes.
And but that's what I mean.
Every time there's a murder.
Yeah.
In any nightly news, there's that guy who has to self-promote.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the level that they went to with every character. Like I look at Matt's little brother. Matt's little brother's story arc is fucking great.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
And I got to a point, I don't know about any of you, but I felt bad for him, because while he's a total shithead, like he's kind of doesn't have a choice. Like this is the road that he's been dealt, like,
yeah.
And we understand Matt. Matt's all frustrated that his mom's with this guy, and this guy's a fucking douchebag and whatever else. And we identify with that. This kid doesn't even have his older brother. So the only thing he has is attacking his sister. And I'm not justifying any of this. I'm saying this is deep writing, right? Yeah. And the little sister, same thing. Like she's even more left out, because on top of everything else, like her brother's a dick to her, but at least she has Matt sticking up for her.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have that, because he's, excommunicated himself from that. But everything he does is like based on the environment that he's in, and just how he views that he's been treated, whether that's just or not.
Yeah, he's definitely a product of his environment. And I think Matt at some point was probably, I get the impression that his mom hasn't been with the boyfriend for that long. So Matt was probably at some point kind of like the father figure to his, and that's probably why he has that heart. Like even after his brother pulls the gun on him, he still hugs him, and shows some empathy. And he's got a pretty big heart. And I think that comes from just being old enough and being forced into a position where he's got to take care of these kids while the mom is away, but still be, a kid in his own right too.
Yeah. And then this guy shows up and gives him rules, and he's like, where the fuck were you? Like, what are you bringing to the table?
Well, he's obviously taking stuff from the
Yes, he's a food eater for sure.
motherfucker, food eater.
Food eater.
What an insult. Those of us who don't eat food. No.
It reminds me of when I was 20, I lived with a friend of mine and his family for a little while because I just lost my apartment. And my friend's little brother was fighting with him one time, and he was yelling at him, and we all smoked. His little brother didn't. And when he was yelling at him one day, he said, he called him it was very similar to that scene. He said something like, "You were smoking, smoker, bad lungs." And when the second he said that, I thought of that. I thought of that movie because I've always quoted that with friends of mine and stuff after I saw that movie.
Well, James, you bring up the whole thing about no throwaway characters, and I agree. So I don't want you to think that I'm setting you up to conflict with you. But the teacher, I think, is even a better one because typically when we have these movies that involve teenagers, the teachers can be throwaway characters. Mm-hmm. Like in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you got Bueller. I forgot what the teacher's name was in that, but it is played by Ben Stein. Mm-hmm. But this teacher is great because you get a glimpse into who this guy is when they're messing with Maggie about Maggie wants to fuck him. Maggie's got the hots for him, blah, blah, blah. So you see him as a teacher, very impassioned, whatever. And then they come back to the school because Maggie gets up. She has that comment about she feels like she's been dipped in French fry oil or cooking oil or whatever it was because they've been out. So she goes to school and he's sitting there talking, getting on to these kids about not giving a shit. It's like, this girl was killed. None of you care. And they're putting up this false or putting up this facade that they kind of do care, like the kids who were talking to the press. And this one guy makes that comment. He's like, yeah, that was really self-righteous and bullshit that you just said. And just there's no one who's not going to be a target. But when Maggie comes in and he asks her how she feels, that really sets him off because it points out, if you hadn't already been paying attention throughout the entire film, he points out the problem with these kids, or at least the perceived problem. It's like, none of you actually care because if you did, none of you would be here today because you'd have been up all night, anxious, worried, whatever. You wouldn't have been here because you'd have been so tired because your mind would have been on her.
Right.
And I think that's something that goes beyond just the time period of this film. You have this through the 90s, through the early 2000s, or, and even up till now, where there are people who act as though they care, where I think it was even captured in the film, The Hate You Give, where this girl's friend has been murdered by the police, and the school that she's going to, private school, none of these kids know the guy, but they all stage a protest. Like, oh, we're going to walk out of school to protest his shooting. And she's thinking oh, great, they actually care about my friend from my neighborhood. And what it turned into was it was a bunch of kids who wanted to skip their test. And she got pissed because you guys don't give a shit. You're pretending that you are, but you're only doing it to latch on to my pain, his family's pain, whatever, to get out of your quiz, get out of your test, whatever it is, or just play hooky from school. And I think the teacher at that point really drives it home for, whether you've been paying attention or not to their reactions and how they're dealing with this, that they haven't grieved. But I would also argue, I don't think they've had the time to grieve and have the time to process it. Yeah. So some of his may be misplaced, and it may be the frustration that he has about it from looking at a different perspective. But in all honesty, they haven't really had the time to process their pain because this shit just happened. And then more stuff has been happening since then to where they, again, don't know how to deal with it.
Let's jump towards one question we like to ask people is if people liked this film, do you have others that you think they should watch as well?
Definitely.
Yes. Super Dark Times, right?
Yes. Super Dark Times. Mean Creek. Mean Creek is another one that's super dark. Kids. That's even darker and not for everyone.
Kids was the one I was going to go with, so that was my whole answer.
Well, I'm going to steal one from James before he has a chance, which is Stand By Me.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
One of my
Which came out the
favorite
same
films of all time.
year, right? Came out.
I think it might have been 80. James would know better than me. It might have been 88. After I steal his movie.
I want to say 86, but I'm not positive. Anyway, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I was
You're
going
right,
dark,
86.
so kids was my answer. But yeah, all right,
There's
cool.
Another
Yeah,
one
go
called
ahead.
Elephant. Is it called Elephant? Has anyone ever seen it?
Yeah, with the school shooting, with the Gus Van Sant movie. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm surprised that movie was even made.
That's a rough movie to watch.
Yeah. I don't like it nearly as much as any of the ones that I listed, but and I don't even really like kids that much. But there's a lot of them that I'm not even thinking of right now. But yeah, Mean Creek and Super Dark Times, for sure.
Well, another
Very cool.
one I would definitely throw out there is The Outsiders.
Yeah.
You know, that whole idea of friendship, loyalty, brotherhood. You know, connecting with people that aren't blood, or creating a family that isn't your blood family, and then also the rejection, because there's a great moment between Ponyboy and Derry where, you know, they're not, I mean, of course you don't have any parents in this film either, but where Derry and Ponyboy are fighting about what he's supposed to do, and this whole idea that, you know, they're all trying to figure things out. I mean, Derry's only like in his early 20s and everybody else is like 18 and below. So it's all these teenagers that have no supervision trying to figure out what the hell to do with their lives, or at least trying to figure out what the hell to do with their day to day.
Yep.
The final thing I would throw in is, if you loved Crispin Glover in this, just watch any fucking thing that he's in, because I love it, and you should too.
Willard.
Willard, 100%. Why don't we bring it back to you guys? Tell us where we can find Wormwood and find your other books and follow you online.
Wormwood is everywhere, I think, right now. I mean, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold nowadays. And then, yeah, for me personally, I just had a book come out called Paradise Club, which is also available wherever books are sold. And then you can find me on Twitter, where I'm most active, and also at my website, timmeyerwrites.com.
Cool.
I just thought of one more movie before I talk about myself.
Yeah, sure.
Have you guys seen Mysterious Skin?
No.
It's got what's that guy's name? Gordon Levitt, or what's that guy's name?
Oh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, he's in it. Yeah, that's Super Dark anyway. Coming of age. But yeah, I don't have anything scheduled for release, but I have stuff coming out late winter, early spring. One of them is actually a coming of age that has some cosmic horror stuff in it. So it's a different kind of a departure for me. And I just had a vampire, the first in a vampire thing that I'm doing, and it's under the name C.E. Lutzke, because it's a little bit, what's a lot different than most of my other stuff. It's more of like a, I mean, it's obviously supernatural, but it's just a female protagonist, vigilante vampire that suffers from more of a condition than an actual, supernatural vampire thing. So that just came out like 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago. It's called Bloodletter. The series is called The Hamato Pages. And go buy Wormwood. And I also play guitar.
Jude, you mentioned Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and then you got me thinking about Brick, which is also kind of a movie that I think might sort of fit with this.
Yep.
That's such a stylish movie. I love it.
It really is. I love indie films.
Yeah.
So many good ones out there.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys for stopping by today.
Yes,
I had a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So much.
I loved this film so much. So I literally hadn't heard of it. So thank you.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I bet you we should go back and talk to Crispin and ask him a couple questions about this.
Boy,
from a Michelob.
Wish I could take that back, huh? Oh, yeah, I would totally bring it
from a Michelob.
You were worth this to me, buddy, Crispin's like, thanks, and like throws it directly in the trash can. He's like, fucking psycho, bringing me poison shit, So
The next time you hang out with Crispin, just call him Lane the whole time. See if he picks up on it.
That's fantastic.
Give him some gas money.
$2 and change.
All nickels. Here you go, buddy. Oh, man. All right. Well, we will wrap this up then. So thank you once again for being here. And as always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we will see you next week here at thenecronama.com.